I think we're live. Hello, everybody. Christian Bradley back for the Game Institute, and we are broadcasting live from our radio tower. We'll be in Brazil today. How about that? It seems like a fitting Friday location. That's where I'd like to be today. So, we are going to be talking about Unwrap. We'll get to that in a second. While I'm talking here, I'm going to go ahead and just do a little bit of maintenance on my object. Whoa, what is that there? There's a render error. Going to have to keep an eye on that. There we go. That silly gear object never has the interior piece. I don't know why. I don't want a gear without the middle piece. It needs to at least have the option. So, I hope everybody's Friday is going well. I'm always very excited about Friday because pretty much all I got to do is get through the morning here, and then I'm home free. My son doesn't have homework on Friday, so the evenings are freed up. He's got some athletic stuff that he ends up doing in the afternoon, so I get to get outside and just kind of chill out and haul him around and get him to his different events. So Friday's very exciting around these parts. And some news. The broadcast now, I'm handling most of them on my side. I think I mentioned that in an earlier video. So what that will mean is the times can be a little bit more flexible down the road. The calendar that you all see in Game Institute is going to change for next week. I need to change the calendar. But we're going to be out next week. Right now it shows some events scheduled for next week. But those will be changed after the video here today. And we'll be in next Friday, but I'll be out Monday through Thursday. And then we'll be in the following week, and right now it shows that we're actually off. So we're just going to flip-flop weeks. I gotten the opportunity to shoot a bunch of these video series, not only for Game Institute, which would be plenty. They've got videos coming out of my ears for that curriculum stuff. That's what most of the streaming stuff is based off of. But lynda.com has me booked up for what is there? I think there's now 9 series. And each of those series is an hour long, and I don't know if we'll get through all 9 of them. That's booked into all the way into 2000. What would that be? 17. But at least the first 3 series are booked, and so that's when you see those breaks in the curriculum. That's me dealing with lynda.com. They have a sound booth, I guess you'd call it. Looks like those kind of stereotypical radio booths you'd see on TV, all soundproof. And so you shoot your videos inside a locked sound booth. It's like being locked in a little box for a week. And the one that's coming up is a live shoot, which I've never done, so that'll be exciting. That's actually me, the real me, not just the voice me, but the real me on camera, introducing some stuff. It'll be on video game history, so that one's kind of a weird one. That one's going to take some planning. Anyways, those are coming up. So the schedule will be two of these a day, but there'll be some days that'll be a little flaky in there over the next, we'll just say over the next 3 months. But there you go. So we're going to continue with this entry-level stuff in Blender. There are some advanced videos coming, by the way. That was never part of the plan, just to do the entry-level stuff. That was just kind of bad planning on my part. So now that I can do the calendar, I'm going to move a few things around after Thanksgiving. and we'll have some advanced level stuff mixed in there. Just I had scheduled it kind of thinking this would be the best way to go. I think we've done a little bit too much on the entry level stuff in the streaming over the last couple weeks, so we'll do some advanced stuff. But now that I can control the calendar on it, I can move that stuff around myself. So I'll get you some more advanced stuff here very quickly. All right, so let's talk about unwrapping. Oh, by the way, if you're in the chat room, I see Dale's already posted there. But if you're in the chat room, go ahead and post just so I know who's there. I don't have a way of seeing who's in the chat room. It's the whole reason of the chat room is to chat. All right. Well, unwrapping. We've talked about unwrapping before. It never really goes away, and so you never stop talking about unwrapping. In all the classes that I teach, I swear I've probably talked about unwrapping more than any other single process because it shows up in every class. There's kind of multiple ways to do unwrapping, so eventually you got to show folks how to do it all those different ways. And then there's just a pile of little rules and bylaws and pathways through unwrapping that you need to make choices on as you create your model. So a lot of times you're having to kind of re-unwrap or fix unwrapping issues as you move through the pipeline process or the modeling of your asset, character, prop, whatever it is. I picked this little gear object mainly because it's got a bunch of curves on it, which we'll talk about. It's also got a very clear top and a bottom, which we'll talk about. And then it's got these sides that we can at least deal with stitching edges together. And we'll talk about what's going on there with the unwrapping. All right. Also, I've got my unwrap window, or my Blender calls it the UV image editor window, open here. So I've just split off a separate screen, and the very quick tour will include this little button up here, this little plus button, which if I hit that, that's going to give me some options once I start unwrapping. So I'm going to go ahead and close it for now, but yeah. Okay, so to get set up here, I'm in edit mode at this point. Made my little gear, and I'm going to click on a few buttons. So this is how I tend to work. I'm going to go over here under, which one is it? Options. I'm going to hit the live unwrap button here. You can also do that. We don't have anything selected yet. You can also do that. Just a second. Oh, we don't have any. Never mind. Skip that part. We'll be right back to that in a second. I'm doing these out of order. But I hit that live unwrap button there, and that's just going to let me see what's going on over here, sort of kind of live. It's not exactly live, but it's fine. Now, when we unwrap this, we get a couple choices. Today, I'm just going to kind of slap a basic unwrap on it, but you get a few choices, and if you want to explore them, here's your unwrap. It's under UV unwrap and then unwrap. That's rather unnecessary interface element, but it is there. You also get this Smart UV project. We'll take a look at both of those guys, but you get all these other ones too. Like cylinder projection might be a pretty good one for what we're doing here. Yeah, maybe we'll look at that one. I wasn't planning on it, but we got time. So let's go ahead and just hit unwrap on this and see what happens. So with just unwrap, what it's done here is taken pretty much every polygon and flattened them out. So that's why you're seeing this kind of big, ugly square. If we were doing a cube, that might work because, well, it might work. It depends on what you want. But if we wanted a different image, say, on every side, it's not going to work. It's just flattened everything out. Now, if we have a generic tiling material, maybe. The truth is, I don't really use just the unwrap, this top one here, too much, just because it seems to just make too much work for me in the long run. It works. It's a little bit too simple. So if we go to Smart UV project, I mean, what's better than a smart one? Then we click on this. This little dialogue comes up, and the only one that I tend to change is this island margin. I'm going to leave it at 0 for now, but I usually bump that up to like 3, and I'll show you what it does here once we get going. But if I hit OK, well, see, that makes more sense. It's kind of like parts that you would get in a little plastic model set, right? You can kind of figure out what's what in here, sort of, kind of. Like, I don't know that we really know what all this stuff is, but here's the top and the bottom, clearly. And that island margin setting, if I go back to it, go to Unwrap, Smart Unwrap. If I bump this up to, say, 3, oh, it's only 1, sorry. It's 0.3. 0.3, and hit OK, you can see that now we've got this gap between it. That's clearly too big, but go back to here. I got my settings wrong. The settings I gave you were from Mac. Those won't do you any good. We'll try 0.03. You always keep it at 3s. I just forget which one goes. There we go. It's 0.03 in Blender. That works better. And so what it did is it left this little gap. And Blender really should have the default set to have that as a gap, I think, because when you bake your normal maps, you really need a gap. Most of the time, you want a little gap in there. We're not going to talk about why, but you just do, usually. And I just like to have a gap here between the edges. Anyways, that's what it does. So 0.03 should get you what you want. I don't usually mess with the other guys here. I usually leave them alone. So I don't think it's on the fly either. You know what? I've never tried. Oh, it is on the fly. That's interesting. I didn't know that. Oh, it's on the fly, so you can actually change that. Yeah, that's really interesting. I've never tried that. Okay, so we've got our UVs. Now, the problem with that is we don't really know what's what. So if we were to go into Photoshop, and let's say we wanted numbers on the side here. I mean, that's a good example. I don't know why you would, but you know, you wanted it to read 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, all the way around, kind of like a clock dial or something. We wouldn't know where to put that. Now, there's a few tricks. We can come in here, and I can highlight areas using L. And if I was to go down here, and I think this part's really rather stupid, but if I go down here to this button, which is the sync button, I'm going to click that button, turn off all my selections over here with the A button, so A just selects everything, and then come back over here, hover over an area, and hit L. Oh, I need faces selected. That has to be on. This is why I don't like this. It's too many buttons, but it works great once it's set up. It's just too many buttons. If I hit L, it's going to highlight that area. So we know that's the bottom. This one's obviously the top. But see, I can come over here now, and I can highlight, say, these areas. I'm clicking on these. I can click on this, and we know that, well, these two here are right there. But that doesn't necessarily do us any good when we get into Photoshop. We can export this template, you know, but I'm probably not going to know that this particular side is that one. They all look the same. So what we're going to do is fix that up here in a second. A few other tricks, kind of because we've just mentioned them. If you want to export this template, it is under Show UVs, Export UV Layout, and I think that is an add-on. I've had it there forever, but I think it's turned on. Let me check. It's under User Preferences. This was brought to my attention a few weeks ago. I mentioned to just use that, and somebody said they didn't have it showing, and I think that's because it's an add-on. If I go to UV, yeah, it's Export UV Layout. Let me check this real quick. If I turn that off, does that still show up? Yeah, see, it's not there anymore. It should be right above it. Okay. I just, when I first started Blender, I turned that on because I don't know why you would ever want it off. It really should be on by default. But there's under Blender User Preferences, Add-on, Import Export UV Layout. Make sure that's on. I have no idea why you wouldn't want that on. Save the user setting. And now you'll get that little guy there. And so what you can do is say Export UV Layout. We're just going to export. I'll just export it to my desktop here. I'm going to export that. We're going to come back to it in a second. We'll come back to that in a second. I'm going to go ahead and start up Photoshop in the background so we don't have to wait for it. And then what I'm going to do is come back in here, and we're going to clean this up a little bit. There's a couple ways you can do that here, and there's kind of the default way that is fine, and that is to click on each edge. So here, let's look at this. That's this edge right here. Get that where you can see it. That's that edge here, and if I, just a second, there we go. If I hit V on my keyboard, what it's going to do is start stitching these together, and it's going to get a little bit messy until they're all stitched together. Well, I guess once I start doing them in order, it won't be too messy. But so you can see I'm hitting V. It's stitched them all kind of randomly together right now. And once we get them all together, we should end up with one big long piece. And so what it's doing is it's making a big line of polygons that's going to be this whole outer ring. And that's why I picked this object. By the way, this object's going to behave really well. Don't expect every object to behave really well. They don't. So see how it's just kind of adding on to it, and it's going to skip around here. I'm not really sure what determines where it ultimately ends up. I've never really given it any thought. And you can tell, oh, that's what happened. Okay, this is the inside. So that's this piece here. Here we can select it so you can see that. Maybe. There we go. If I select that, that's the interior. This is going to be the exterior piece. So that wouldn't be a bad way to lay out these UVs. And you don't have to really even come in here and start moving stuff around. In some videos, you'll see me come in here, hit L to select it, hit G for grab, and then kind of place it. Like that wouldn't be a bad place there. But then this guy's not going to fit, right? If I hit the right button. This guy's not going to fit. See, he doesn't fit in that one-to-one space. And right now, they are all to scale one-to-one to each other. So they're the proper scale. You don't want to be shrinking this, like go to scale and shrink this piece down, because now the texture on that's going to look blurry. It's going to be too big because this is too small. And if that hurts your head, don't worry about it. You can just look at it. If it looks blurry, it's wrong. And these here would be textured correctly. So, and I can do this. I can go to select all, UVs, pack islands, and I would probably use average island scale for this particular situation. But if I do that, then I'm just losing UV space, because it's going to take this long piece and stretch it to fit one-to-one in my one-to-one space. That was bad English, but it's going to fit it into this one-to-one space and then smash everything down in scale to accommodate that. I don't want that either. So what you may want to do is select an edge here. Yeah, see, like, this one here looks good. And then break that edge. And for some reason, I don't know why, everything under UVs is here, under the UV menu, except for splitting edges, which is under Select. I don't really think this should be under Select. But you can split the edge. So I could go to, split. Oh, sync is enabled, sorry. There you go. You can we'll select everything. I can come over here now and it'll work. My edges. So we'll select, where was it? I think that edge. And then go to select split. And now what I've got are two separate pieces there. or I can go and just select them over here. I want sync on. There we go. And we'll do a box selection. Do it real quick. We'll just select that. And now I can just move that, and they're going to be separate. That's basically what the sync button is doing. It's allowing you to skip that split edge feature. I know some Blender people just absolutely love that, and I get it. That's fine. I think I'm not crazy about how that works, but I think some of that's just what I'm used to in other programs, and that's probably not the best way to judge a program. So it doesn't mean the other program does it very well. And so now I can take all of these, hit A, select them all, and we'll go here. Hit average. No. UVs, pack islands, and see it'll pack them all together. Blender doesn't do a wonderful job of packing these. Like clearly, I could, if I was smart, I'd come in here and maybe we'll select, say, this one, hit rotate 90 degrees. My keyboard's off again. Where's my... This happened before. My numpad turned off, I think. Yeah, my number pad turned off again. Just a second. Let me get it turned back on. My keyboard has this weird little button. I can never find it. I have a gaming keyboard, and it's got a strange button on it, and I found it before that seems to affect my number pad. I think it has to do when I play certain games and I have the keyboard activated. There we go. It's when I play certain games, I have like macros set up for my game controls, and when I get back into Blender, my keyboard's kind of jacked up. So if I come over here, let's move that over a little bit. See, I could now select all of these, and I could scale that up a little bit, and I'm getting back a little bit of resolution. That's a better way to arrange those particular UVs. You can see I'm a little bit off over here. Spending too much time on this. It's not really going to matter. So assume that everything's stuck here in the 1-to-1. I think that's right. And now we're good to go. I don't know if you noticed it, but when I went to pack, there was a little, what's it called here? Wait a second. What was it called? Forgot the name. Go to pack islands, but margin. And margin here, you can ramp up or down, and that will help you with some of that too. I'm going to undo that one. So now this is UV mapped. Now I'm going to go ahead and save this, and then I'll show you another real quick way to map it, but I wanted to export this so we can take a look at that in Photoshop here in a second. We'll look at both of these. Let's call this 2. All right. So you can do it that way. The other way is just to come in here, and I know anybody that's been using Blender would just wonder why I don't do this. That's not a good thing. That's a render card issue, it looks like. Graphic card issue. I'm going to come in here and just select these. And what I could do is select the seams that I want to be UV seams. My little gear here has some edge loop issues, but usually don't have to select this many. So I'm going to select all the way around it. There you go. And then I'm going to just select kind of a random cut here, and we'll just say here. It's kind of random setting, but let's see what we get. Now remember what that one looks like, because we already exported it, but we'll be back to it in a second. And now if I come in here, now this is the second way to UV map something. This is by setting the seams. So these orange lines are seams. Makes sense. They're on the outside. Usually the seams are on the outside. And the way that I did this was I let Blender unwrap it, and then I kind of put it back together like a little puzzle. Setting the seams, you usually don't have to do all that. So let's see what we get. If I set the seams by holding down Shift and Alt and all your setting stuff, select your edges. You got to be in edge mode, obviously, for that, right there. And then lost my train of thought. Go to Unwrap, and you could just unwrap. Or sorry, I didn't set the seams. Skip that last part. First, go to Edges, which is Control E, and then Mark Seam. It's going to turn those bright orange. And see, in Live Unwrap, it's already done at this point. Now, it's got these two pieces. Oh, no. Butted up against each other. Okay, that's fine. I was going to say they were on top of each other, but they're not. So that's my unwrap. Now, it did do a little bit of a weird job here in that it took the top and the bottom, and it piled them on top of each other. And then these two guys it kind of put side by side, which is fine. But if you want that top to be selected, polygons. Hit L, make sure polygon's on, and that's interesting. I didn't know it would do that. Is that really nice? No? Huh. Okay. It just selected both of those. Once I go to unwrap, it won't, but I didn't know it would do that. If I go to mesh now and go to unwrap and unwrap, it's, it'll place them back in there if you wanted to. So as far as your unwraps go, you can either place the seams. That's usually how I do it. I think that's easier. But the problem, and what I find with the students, is placing the seams on the objects doesn't do you any good at all if you don't know what's going on when it unwraps things. Like, you're just guessing. You have something like a character, you're going to have trouble knowing where to put the seams if you haven't done that before. It's kind of like making a pair of jeans or something out of fabric. You're not going to have a clue where to put the seams, where to put the stitching, if you haven't made one before. So, you're going to need to do all that. Oh, Dale just pointed out why that didn't work. It's because my center isn't separated here. You saw me trying to separate the top and the bottom. It's because this. Well, that just proves my point. How about that? Let's back up. Let's say I did that on purpose to prove a point. And that is, if you unwrap something wrong, like I did, I'd like to say that was on purpose. It's not. I'm going to mark these seams here. Mark that. We can do that. I'm going to mark these seams. You'll see that watch over here as I mark the seams. It's going to kind of explode out. We're going to see a top and a bottom and a center piece pop out. Go to Edges or Control E, mark seam, and see how now. Yeah, Dale saved me there. That's right. I would have figured that out eventually, but it's hard to do this and talk. That's the problem. So now I got a top and a bottom, a center, which I'd forgotten, and an outside piece. But I guess that does prove the point, that if you didn't know that center had to be separated out because it's a cylinder piece, you're just going to be staring at something over here that may not be what you want. And that's because the top and the bottom were attached. As it is now, I have a center piece that's kind of been ripped out or unzipped. That's these orange lines, and that piece there to let it lay flat. So what you can do, and here's what I think, this is what I tell my students to do when they're first using Unwrap, is use the automatic unwrapping tools in your program. In Blender, that's the Unwrap and probably the Smart UV Project button. That'll get you probably your best results, and then use the pack buttons over in the UV editor, image editor. In this case, I could have used cylindrical projection. It would have worked okay. I just would have got a little bit of distortion. But you could just click on these and see which one gets you the best result. Once you kind of figure out what's going on here, like what you're really looking at, and some people get it right away. They can look at this and, they see exactly what these parts are. But if you're looking at this going, I don't know what I'm looking at, because that certainly looks different than that, and I don't know. I don't get it. That's about 2/3 of the students I have when they first start. They don't know what they're looking at over here, and then they get confused and frustrated because there's just a ton of buttons. So all you really need to do is just go to mesh, select everything on your object, be in polygon mode, edit mode, or polygons edit mode, and then go to mesh, unwrap, and just use smart UV project. And if you get something over here that maybe has a few too many elements in it, I wouldn't worry about it on the first couple objects. I would just go with it. But eventually you'll be able to put this together exactly how you want, using stitching and rotating and moving elements around and combining elements and layering elements and knowing what's going on. I don't like to get too picky with it with students until after we get through the first baking process, because then they can kind of figure out what they might want to do with their UVs. And there's a whole bunch of little kind of rules that go with UVs, but it totally depends on what you're trying to do with your object. So it's a little different with every object. Anyways, we'll talk about those in future classes. So that's going to do it for our little UV unwrap segment here. I'm going to be back here in about an hour and a half at 11 o'clock Pacific Standard Time, and we're going to be talking about Photoshop. Oh, you know what? Speaking of Photoshop, I didn't open up those UV maps. I'll do that before we leave. Just to show you that you can open up the template. Of course, I gotta find them here. Where are they? Here they are. So here's the two templates that I made. Oh, I had selected on. I screwed that up. Sorry about that. If I go to UVs, export, you need, it's because I turned it on and off is why it threw me. All UVs on. Here, we'll just export this real quick. That's because I turned it on and off in the user preferences. Usually that's on by default on my side. And if we go over here, close both of those. Open. There we go. Now I have my UVs. So if I was to paint on this, we'll do a real quick paint job here. I paint on this. It's really nice. There you go. That's some nice artwork there. This is the interior. We'll just make that more zigzag. There you go. We save it. I'm just going to leave all those lines in there. Don't worry about it. We'll save it as a JPEG. And then I go back into Blender. Load that. And it's on there. Maybe you'll see it. Go to material. Okay, where'd my material go? There it is. Yeah, okay, it's on there. So, Hemilight, just a second. There you go. So now you can see it's on there. And now I could paint whatever I wanted on there and it'll fit right onto my object. Ta-da. So, now that'll do it for today. So I'll be back in about an hour and a half, and we'll be talking about Photoshop filters that I think are helpful with game assets. Just kind of a quick walkthrough, and I'll show you what I think are my favorite filters, and some of them you might not know about. There's some tricks in Photoshop that I think are helpful. So it won't just be regular old filters. We'll talk about some cool stuff you might not have ever seen before. See you then. Bye bye.